I'm doing some recording this week and I wanted to have a few extra snares on hand, and I thought, why don't I get this old friend out? So this is an old 6.5 by 14 Yamaha steel snare. And this head, I literally haven't changed it in 10 years. Just been kind of a beater snare, so that's what it sounds like right now. I wonder what it sounds like if I tune it up and use another head on it. So let's see. So as you can see right here, this head has been through the paces. So we have an old Evans, what is this? An old Evans SD Dry or Genera Dry. Again, it's not sounding the greatest right now. Let's see what happens when we take a Remo Power Stroke and put it on. The head I'm going to be trying out today is going to be a Remo Power Stroke. This is going to be a P3 coated Power Stroke, and I'm curious to see how it sounds. I'm thinking I would like to get this thing kind of sounding dead and heavy and ugly, but who knows? Let's see. After I clean off the rim and the bearing edge, I'm going to set this head down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, gonna get all the tension rods on, and I'm going to make them all finger tight. And what I like to do is I like to set them opposite lugs and kind of tighten them down at the same time. And I'll do that in kind of a star pattern. So we're gonna get everything nice and finger tight, and then we're gonna start fine tuning. This is what it sounds like when the head is just finger tight on. Or if I put the snares on. Okay, so let's see what it sounds like once I kind of start tightening up these tension rods. Everybody likes to tune a different way, and I'm not prescribing to one right or wrong method. This is what I do. I'll take two drum keys and have them on opposite lugs, and I'll probably just do about a half turn, and I'll skip a few lugs again, going kind of in a star pattern. I'll go half a turn here, half a turn, half a turn. And then I'll do that till I get maybe about like 2 to 3 full turns on that snare drum, and then see where I'm at. After tuning this up a touch, I want to do a little spot check, see how it's sounding. It's sounding different. It's not what I expected to sound like, but that's not a bad thing. So I'm going to, again, try get this head a little bit more in tune. I like to tune with the snares off and just kind of maybe get a stick and put my finger in the center, kind of reduce the overtone. Sometimes I even like to put this snare drum on top of like another surface so I can't hear that resonant head. But then I'll just tap around. So I can see that there's a little bit of variance between the pitches, between the lugs. And again, you could, again, lose the forest for the trees and just like try like crazy to get one lug right in tune with the lug next to it, and then you find the rest of the drum is out of tune. So one thing I like to do is I'll play the drum and maybe see how it responds as I'm tuning. And sometimes some things will reveal themselves. After doing a little bit more fine tuning, here's where we're at. Not sounding bad, sounding a little bit better. Still hearing that kind of a little bit out of tune with itself. I think it might be with a resonant head. But another thing I really like to do as I'm going around this is I'll press down on this head because it's a new head, and usually if I do that and I press down on the head, after I do that, I can already hear that the drum is getting a little bit lower. It's not a bad thing. Just the head is stretching out, and we're just kind of letting it, instead of doing it all at once, I'm kind of letting that head sit in. And I'll probably do this a couple more times, tune it up, fine tune it, play it a couple times, press down on it, and do a little bit more fine tuning, and then seeing where we're at. So as I'm tuning this batter head, noticing that the resonant head is kind of ringy, probably needs tuned, it hasn't been touched up in a while. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off the snares, I'm gonna loosen things up. I like to flip this upside down And then I'll just very delicately, I'll place this stick underneath the snare so I can actually hear. So I can hear this resonant head, and I can hear that it's not in tune with itself. So I'm just gonna go around and kind of gently tap on these lugs and seeing if I can get a little bit more. Now, if you don't like kind of fine tuning the resonant head that way, another thing I like to do is I have this drum right side up. What I'll do is I'll play that snare, and I'll actually start messing around with the tension of that bottom tension rod. And kind of hear how it sounds and how it responds. And I'll do that with every lug if I have the time. So right now, this is kind of where the drum is sounding. Doesn't sound bad. Again, not what I wanted, but it sounds a whole hell of a lot better than when I first started today with that old head. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let this head sit overnight so it can kind of stretch out, and then I'm going to try and fine tune it again. But so I'm not too crazy right now about how this sounds. Again, I'm using this as a third or fourth snare if we want some kind of weird, ugly sounds. And I plan on getting a little bit experimental with this. But one thing I really enjoy doing, this isn't meant to be like a pristine snare, so let me start messing around with some sounds. So what happens if I put a big fat snare? Okay, not bad. What if I put instead that Steve's Donut here? I'm not sure if that's better or worse. But one thing I really like to do is I'll put two of these on at one time. That's kind of sounding a little bit better as opposed to, all right, sounding a little bit dirtier and uglier. But one thing I really like doing, let's see how this sounds. It sounds really great. Now, I could probably tune this in a way like really low and get some gaff tape on there to make it sound like this. Or I could just put like 3 of these on top right now. And so right now, I'd have to hear how this would sound in the room under a mic. But this sounds pretty good. For what I want it to be. I want it to be kind of like deep and fat and ugly, and this sounds like this. I could potentially use this week while I'm recording. So I'm always a big fan of big fat snare drum toppers, and I like using them in a variety of ways. So I'm gonna let this sit for the night, and then I'm gonna revisit it tomorrow, and maybe you might hear it on a recording coming up soon. One last thing I like to play around with is this. So here's how the snare drum sounds right now. Okay? So I'll take the head I just took off, this old head, place it upside down, and then as opposed to okay, one isn't better or worse, they're just different. And I always like to find all the different options and sounds I can get out of a snare drum or any drum by doing different tuning techniques or just like putting something weird on top of it. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's no right or wrong. It's, all right, what kind of sound you're going for? Let's play around. Maybe we'll accidentally stumble upon something that sounds cool. So if you like this video, if you hated it, you wanted to troll me, or if you have thoughts, give me a comment. You can like, subscribe. I guess you're supposed to say all those things. Really, my only goal is here, I just like documenting things I'm doing with drums. And I think if when I was younger, if someone says, hey, this is how I tune a snare drum, whether it's right or wrong, you kind of take, oh, this is someone else's approach. What from their approach can I take and apply to my own? So again, the great thing about drums is just like music, and I would say if I get philosophical, it's like life. There are many roads that lead to Rome, and nothing is really absolute. You can kind of pick and choose, experiment, and take a few steps down a few different paths and see which one is for you.